Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Free State Podcast. It's been about pushing 2 months since our last show, and our last show was the Conspiracy Roundtable, and that was a great time. And I actually just uploaded that last night. So as you can tell, I've been taking some time off from the podcast, just doing some family stuff, doing some work stuff, starting to get ready for the cold seasons that I hate. But yeah, so that's what I've been up to. And other than that, not a whole lot else. I did win an award on Friday. The Maryland Mises Caucus presented me with the 2023 Mises Caucus of Maryland Most Visits by the Feds Award, and it was awarded to me on Friday. And I thank the Mises Caucus for awarding me that award, and I truly hope that I never get that award again because fuck that. Already going explicit. Okay, so this episode, we are kind of going back to basics, right? For a while, we've been doing interviews and stuff like that, but the legislative session in Maryland is about to start up here soon, about 85 days or so. And it's time to get back onto that wheelhouse, right? We're back to focusing on Maryland issues and libertarian takes on these issues, and our opinions and our fixes on it. As you can see, I'm solo tonight. This is kind of last minute. I just wanted to get back in the saddle, and Scott couldn't join me tonight, so it's just me. So it's like the good old days. It'll just be me talking for a while. It may not be an hour episode, but you don't want to hear my voice for an hour. So I'm just going to talk about some issues that are at hand and things that are coming down the pipeline. I know everybody is just completely infatuated with Israel and the Hamas issue and everything that goes with that. So I will do a update on that and give my opinion on everything with that. But until then, let's go with local issues. So the first thing I have is as of today, Montgomery County presents a proclamation commemorating the International Pronouns Day. So Montgomery County, if you don't know, is probably the worst state or worst county in the state. They are the most woke. They hate your freedoms. They hate your guns. They hate anything that's not woke or trying to peddle sex on young children and drag queens and transing kids and all that. So this is just in their wheelhouse. There's not a whole lot of information on it right now, but it did happen today. This is from the Montgomery County Council on Twitter at 9:47 this morning, as of October 17th, 2023. Joining the proclamation presentation were representatives of county-led efforts and local organizations, including the county offices of community partnerships, Montgomery County DHHS, which is the Department of Health and Human Services, the Jewish Community Relations and Public Affairs of Washington, D.C., suburban Maryland, and Northern Virginia, Cedar Lane UU Congregation, a community where love works. Together we explore the eternal nurture community and build a more just world. Rainbow Place, Maryland, is a 28-bed women's emergency hypothermia shelter in Rockville and Trans, Maryland. It is not for transportation. And more. Montgomery County takes pride in being a welcoming, caring, and diverse community. And I would probably argue to say that probably inclusive as well, that strives to honor and protect the human rights of all residents, because apparently trans people didn't have the same rights as other people up until this proclamation was made. So we have to thank the Montgomery County for their courage and their bravery and proclamating a day of pronouns. It's a day now for pronouns. So pronouns, he, she, they, thems, I, they, whatever else is that's it. It's pronouns. It's all about the pronouns now. Your pronouns, your nouns that you describe yourself as, completely describe your personality, your sex, your gender, and everything else, and tells you what bathroom you can go into. So there, there you go. International Pronouns Day is a thing in Montgomery County. Lord bless us up above that had happened, because I think in all the problems in the world, this is something that really needed to happen. And I'm so happy that it did happen. So congratulations to Montgomery County on continuing to be the worst county in Maryland. And I wish you good luck and Godspeed. So there's been some pushback from the federal courts on SB1. You may have heard about this if you've been following along. If not, then great. You can hear it right now. So SB1, if you hadn't listened to any of my podcasts ever before, especially when I was during the legislative session, SB1 was the thing I was really focusing on, that and Defend the Guard. And with the SB1 thing, it was pretty much stripping us of our rights that were granted to us by Bruin. And they pretty much essentially took it away, right? They could say you could still get concealed carry. They upped the price of the classes, they upped the price of the certification license, whatever you want to call it, and said that you couldn't carry it in a slew of places, pretty much anywhere else other than, walking down the sidewalk or your own house. So thankfully, the federal courts did push back on it, and they have allowed concealed carry in establishments that serve alcohol. They allow concealed carry on private property that's open to the public, and they allow concealed carry within 1,000 feet of public demonstrations. So this is actually an article from Maryland Shall Issue. They've been obviously the main fighters in all of this. Um, it says, on behalf of our members and in partnership with the Second Amendment Foundation, the Firearms Policy Coalition, Maryland Shall Issue, and 3 individual plaintiffs are challenging unconstitutional aspects of SB1, the so-called Gun Safety Act of 2023. Meanwhile, shootings and murders in Baltimore City continue to skyrocket, regardless of this bill passing. In the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland, SB1 effectively nullifies the general right to carry in public for carry permit holders confirmed by the Supreme Court's decision. New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. I had to think about that for a second. Just this last June, it does so by banning firearms in a whole host of locations otherwise open to the public, including places like stores and shops, restaurants, museums, and healthcare facilities. The suit also challenges the general ban on possession of firearms on public transit, owned or controlled by the state mass transit administration, and in the tens of thousands of acres of woodlands in Maryland state parks, state forests, and state Chesapeake forest lands. We have every confidence that we prevail, and they did. So effective 10/1, which was a little over 2 weeks ago. It's before this happened, they were able to fight it in court, saying that what I was stated earlier with the establishment that serve alcohol, private property open to the public, and with 1,000 feet of a demonstration, that they were able to carry it. So there is still some things that are in place that you can't carry before. So like your theaters, which could either be a play or movie theater, you can carry there now. Anywhere that serves alcohol, which was one of my big things, because yes, it can be irresponsible to consume alcohol and possess a firearm. That's for a different story. But I thought it was bullshit that you couldn't carry a firearm in a restaurant, even if you weren't drinking alcohol. And you should be able to go to a restaurant and protect yourself, whether you're drinking or not, honestly. So they took that back. So it's a small win in a state where somebody who respects the Constitution, respects the Second Amendment, is constantly getting shit on. So we were able to fight that back. And, it's a start. It's a start, right? Because we have a lot going against us. And thankfully, thank goodness for MSI, which is Maryland Shall Issue, and the Firearm Policy Coalition for fighting this and at least getting the most common sense things taken off of SB1, or redacted from SB1. So we thank them for that. So you don't need explicit permission to carry on private property. You don't need to not you can't not carry at public demonstrations, which is makes a lot of sense seeing how public demonstrations in this country have gotten more and more aggressive, and primarily while the left and the right are there. And yes, stay strapped even while trashed. I like that. Um, and then establishment serve alcohol, like I said, you should be able to go to a restaurant even if you're not drinking and carry your weapon. Um, so that's a good refresher, and that is a little bit old news, but I just wanted to bring it up in case anybody hasn't heard. And if you're not from Maryland, then it's something that that you can fight against in your state if your state's a liberal hellhole like this is. Next story is a group is pushing for Maryland's climate goals really hard. So if you haven't listened before, or you don't know Governor Wes Moore, who is the actor that is running for president, but is acting as governor for Maryland, and his super ultra mega progressive stances on things. He wants Maryland to be a zero emissions economy by 2045. And there's a lobby group that is supporting this and is pushing it even harder than probably Wes Moore is. So this comes from the DCist. I've never heard of this publication, but it's a thing. So it was a Maryland. Let me just read this. As the Maryland government moves closer to adopting a battle plan because the climate's so bad, a battle plan for meeting the state's comprehensive climate goals, a group of environmentalists, community organizations, and other advocates is releasing a climate proposal of its own in an effort to get the state to move even more aggressively. As if banning the sale of gas-powered vehicles in 10 years or so isn't bad enough. The recommendations were put together by an informal organization called Climate Partners, which formed a few years ago to lobby the General Assembly as lawmakers were debating the expansive Climate Solutions Now Act. The basis of targets that state officials are now scrambling to meet. Those include cutting the state's greenhouse emissions by 60% by 2031, a year after 2030, ironically, and building a zero emissions economy by 2045, like I stated earlier. A 72 page draft of the advocates' plan, which was shared with Maryland Matters early this month, builds on a Maryland Department of the Environment Climate Pathway document, which is serving as interim guidance for meeting the emissions reduction targets that state officials will turn into a final proposal in December. The Climate Partners recommendations, which more than 100 organizations had a hand in, including housing advocates, labor unions, and others whose scope of activities go beyond those of the environmental movement, praises MDE, that's the Maryland Department of Environment, for its draft proposal and in some cases nudges the state to be more aggressive. The executive director of Maryland Sierra Club said the advocates' plan is not meant to be antagonistic towards state officials. In addition to encouraging the state to think more boldly, the plan is also meant to mobilize a range of organizations to lobby state officials to move aggressively in the years ahead, he said. There's so much power in the unity that Climate Partners has, said Jose Corando Flores, a organizer with the immigrants' rights group CASA, who in recent years has gotten like really bad. They used to be like kind of based in the sense that they wanted easier immigration laws and citizenship pathways to citizenship in Maryland, but have just completely just Trump derangement syndrome, COVID idiots kind of move, and they're just so far left that as libertarians, we essentially have nothing in common with them anymore, which is a real shame because they were doing good work in the community, right? They were getting immigrants jobs, they were getting immigrants housing, they were getting them a pathway to citizenship. But now they've branched off into so much other progressive bullshit that, as libertarians, it's not even worth working with them anymore, which is it's a real shame. But CASA, who was a part of the process, that power is magnified by the individual advocacy our member organizations do. Like the MDA Pathway Report, which is expected to spark legislative action next year and beyond when it's finalized. The Climate Partners document is broken into several sectors where climate action is necessary, and it's pretty. This whole is actually quite a long article. They pretty much they're talking about increase in taxes for gasoline vehicles, getting rid of gas powered appliances, that be stoves, whether that be dryers, and then even like hand tools like leaf blowers. Like Montgomery County just banned gas leaf blowers. We're going to be like California here soon. We're going to be banning gas generators, all that fun stuff. And on top of everything else, progressive that you can think of as far as climate goes, it wants to do away with the state's STRIDE program, which provides funding mechanisms for utilities to maintain and expand natural gas infrastructure, which is an absolutely fucking horrible idea, because so much of our power and infrastructure is based on natural gas in this state because we have a plethora of it out in Western Maryland. So it wants to just let that like crumble, right? So that we have to get electricity from somewhere, but where's electricity going to come? Because we don't have the wind or the sun or the water power infrastructure to set that up. So we're just, rolling blackouts. It's fine. It's what we want, right? Implementing a more aggressive strategy to electrify commercial buildings and homes, pursuing green construction, whatever the fuck that means, legislation or regulations. They don't even know what it means. Encouraging more farmers to install renewable energy on their land, mandating certain food additives for cattle feed that will reduce their methane emissions because our food supply isn't corrupted enough. We got to make it worse so the cows fart fucking less. And demanding stricter waste management practices. Just to name a few of the horrible things that these climate activists want to do, when they failed to realize that fossil fuels aren't from fossils. They renew themselves because it's carbon based, and carbon is constantly being produced by dead things. But we are the carbon they want to reduce. It's so asinine, and the same people that told you to follow the science 3 years ago, and they don't follow the science. Yeah, that's Maryland. That's Maryland for you. That's we're California Junior, essentially. And talking about COVID, this is kind of sad that we still have to talk about COVID in this day and age. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I don't blame you. Time to leave and head south to the mountains again. I don't blame you, brother. I'm right there with you. I wish, the government didn't destroy the housing market and interest rates and all that. And, we could afford to move, because right now, this is supposed to be our starter home. And here we are. We're not leaving anytime soon because we can't beat these interest rates right now. So a U.S. House committee is now investigating a COVID-19 policy at the University of Maryland College Park. Starting in September, if a student tests positive, they have to quarantine off campus. Now, this is like 2023. Like, this isn't some article from 3 years ago, 2 years ago, or even last year. This is from yesterday. This article is from yesterday. Just want to put that out there. That we're still there are still people out there talking like this about COVID. So starting in September, if student tests positive, they have to quarantine off campus. For students who live on campus, this means either going back to their family's home or book lodging off campus, like a hotel. Its cost falls squarely on the student's shoulders. So not only are we exploiting these children, these kids, for their money for student loans, but now we're going to make them pay for a hotel room if they get the COVID, if they get a cold or a flu. Even though it's been a little more than a month since its implementation, some UMD students still aren't aware of the policy. A student says, I feel like it's not really taking into consideration the amount of money it would take in order to isolate yourself in a place that's not here, said junior Christian Wadner. Some are also concerned about the virus's spread under this policy. I understand COVID is still dangerous. That's still an issue, but the policy is also not taking into consideration that some people have immunocompromised family at home. That's still an issue people are worried about, apparently. The concern about this policy is now going off campus. The U.S. House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic, which is still a subcommittee, is investigating the policy. In a letter sent to UMD, President Daryl Pines Friday, the committee questions how UMD's $115 million in CARES Act funding has been spent. The committee also questioned how quarantining students are supported. Jonathan Young, a UMD freshman, thinks the university should help with the costs. Maybe have like 1 or 2 hotel rooms reserved just for quarantining students, or at least have a place where they can go. In a statement to WJZ, a UMD spokesperson confirmed receiving the letter, also saying in part, during the public health emergency and today, we stay focused on the health and safety of our community. The letter was signed by every Republican member of the committee. U.S. Representative Kwesi Fume, who's also in the committee, warned his colleagues of potential overreach. We should not be trying to micromanage a situation at a school that this Congress has no oversight authority of. So I'm going to probably the first and only time I'm going to agree with Mifune, because this is government overreach. It's also overreach of the college for forcing children to do this, but it's also a governmental overreach because this is a state issue. It's a state-funded school. The argument could be that they received $115 million in federal funds, and that if they believe that these funds were spent irresponsibly, then they should have a say of things that go on. That's a debate for another time. So we are still concerned about COVID, and we're forcing kids to pay for quarantining themselves. If they get COVID, and I know a few people that have gotten COVID so far this fall, and it's mostly just sniffles. That's it, it's not the cough, and it's not the flu, and it's not the fever and all that shit. It's the sniffles, and they test positive on a home thing, which could not even be accurate. I could have had it and not known. So just people, again, live your life. It's 2023. We're not worried about COVID anymore. Please stop pushing it. Here's a fun story. It's actually quite hilarious. So we always talk about how when, say, police do something wrong, and the city or the police department gets sued. Well, that's great for the people that were wronged by the police, and they get a payout. But where's that money come from? That money's coming from the taxpayer money. And us as libertarians, we always joke about the government has investigated itself and said that it's done nothing wrong. So what happens when the government investigates the government and finds that it does do something wrong? We have to foot the bill. So the Maryland Highway Agency cited for serious violation connected to the crash that killed 6 highway workers. So if you're not aware, it was a huge hoopla. Kind of rightfully so. 6 people died in a crash in a work zone on 695 in Baltimore County. Maryland's Occupational Safety and Health Office cited the State Highway Administration with a serious violation, which according to the report is a violation where there is a substantial probability that the death or serious physical harm could result. The report issued September 21st also stated that the failure to place the signs near the work zone near Woodlawn left the work crew there exposed to struck by hazards. There are no penalties associated with the citation. So the government has found that we have done something wrong and nothing's going to come of it. In response to WTOP's inquiry, Maryland State Highway Administration sent the following response: safety is our top priority. The citation issued was related to optional signs alerting drivers to potential construction vehicles entering the roadway. The crash did not involve a construction vehicle, and the signs would have not prevented the crash from occurring. So they did this huge giant investigation. 6 people died. Who knows how much money it costs to do this investigation, and nothing's going to come of it because they did nothing wrong. Accidents happen. Shit happens. And the government feels like they need to spend our money when things go awry and there's nothing they can do to prevent it. And after they spend all that money on that investigation, then they say, there's nothing we could do. So this is another one that's kind of being led by MSI a little bit. They're part of the suit. This comes from a case that happened in 2018 where 2 brothers were arrested outside the state house for they were protesting 2A rights in 2018, February of 2018. That has implications on both qualified immunity for police officers as well as the right to video police in the performance of their duties in public. And this has gone to the Supreme Court in 2023. So, this is almost 6 years later. It's going to the Supreme Court. What the Capitol Police are getting away with is a little short of outrageous, said Mark Pennick, president of Maryland Shall Issue, a Second Amendment rights group that is also a party in the case. So qualified immunity has to be reconsidered by the Supreme Court, and I say that as a lawyer who defended qualified immunity for 3 decades while at the Department of Justice. But it seems it has been abused too much and has excused too much bad behavior to allow it to go on unaltered. This is our attempt to ask the court to revisit this. Pennick's organization, protester Kevin Halbert, and the estate of his brother Jeff Halbert, who also was a protester, are asking the U.S. Supreme Court to abolish or sharply restrict the use of qualified immunity for police officers. They are also asking the court to weigh in on the right to video record police activities in public. Pennick said the Fourth Circuit, which includes Maryland, has not ruled definitively on the issue. Until or unless the court weighs in on the assertions of qualified immunity, it will continue to be the rule. There will always be claimed that there is no clearly established precedent in the Fourth Circuit that there is a right to record. 6 or about half of federal circuit courts of appeals have upheld the right to record the public activities of police officers. So there's a little bit more to this, but essentially it's the right is finally starting to fight back against the police and qualified immunity. Hopefully that stays. I know this whole January 6th changed everything with the right and kind of how they view police officers and their duties and what they legally can and cannot do. So this is refreshing to hear, based off of everything that's happened, in the past week and a half with Israel, and the anti-war right has, a lot of it has become pro-war again. So this is a little bit of a refreshing thing that right-leaning organizations or right-leaning people are fighting against qualified immunity. This is something that libertarians have been talking about since the formation of the party in the 70s, and it's finally coming to fruition with the right, because they're realizing that the state is being weaponized against them, and that their rights and their constitutional rights are at risk. So it's good to see someone else other than the progressive left who loves the cops now, or us libertarians, taking the fight of qualified immunity to the Supreme Court at this point. And MSI, which is an organization I support and have supported for years, is one of the people in the suit leading the charge, and that's great to hear. And it just goes to show, you have these small state-run organizations, not state-run, but state-level organizations that are really fighting for people's rights. And if you have an organization in your state that is, fighting for gun rights or fighting for constitutional rights, that you should support them, even if you don't agree on everything with them, right? This is a single issue policy coalition that is worth building, whether it be the right or the left. There's people out there that agree with you on something, and a lot of the time those people are further in the trenches than you are, and you can get in on what they've done and help them, and you can come at it from a different angle. You can take qualified immunity. Here we have what is typically a more Democrat or left leaning issue, and now you have the right fighting against it. Obviously, libertarians have been on the side of ending qualified immunity for a really long time now. But now that the right's in on it, so now we have almost a left, middle, and right, and libertarian coalition that can be built based off of qualified immunity, because the police take an oath to uphold the Constitution, but they violate your constitutional rights any chance they can get. And the sooner that the right can realize this, we can team up, and we can team up with the left, and we can go after these people that are, say that they're the law, and they can say whatever they can do, and that they don't have to uphold the Constitution because they are county or state police, and that they have to follow county or state laws. If they violate the Constitution, they do not have to uphold that law, or cite you or arrest you for the law that you quote unquote violated. Even if it's an unconstitutional law, you didn't violate anything, because the Constitution is still the law of the land, even though they act like it's not. So the sooner we can build these coalitions, these single issue coalitions, and especially something like this, where you can get the left, libertarians, the moderates, the rights, all on board with this, the sooner things can happen. So I know if you're an activist, it can get really fucking tiresome being out there and trying to push these issues, but just know that there's other people out there outside of your political sphere that feel the same way that you do. It's a matter of finding these people, and it's a matter of teaming up with these people and working together to get these things done. So this is a great example of a single issue coalition, or a single issue that at this point, at this juncture, it's spread across all the political spectrum. So, objectively, libertarians are right, all the time. So it's something that the left has been on board with for a while, and now the right is starting to get on to it. Not that the MSI is, the right, but they're relatively Republican leaning. I would argue, even though they're nonpartisan. The next story I have is Baltimore Safe Streets is stealing money. That's a little deceptive of a headline, but essentially that's what they're doing. The Safe Streets receipts thousands in shoes, mystery training, and COVID funds for LA trip. My link's not working anymore. Let me try to bring this back up. So if you don't know about Baltimore Safe Streets, it is a program that has been implemented in other cities like Chicago, where instead of having the police come and arrest these people for disturbances or fighting or something like that, they have these essentially they're caseworkers that will come to kind of these hotbeds of gun violence or gang violence, or just any sort of violence, fighting, anything like that, and try to step in and mediate the issue as a neutral party. That is essentially their plan, and their idea, the conception of the whole thing. And Baltimore City has started implementing the Safe Streets about a year ago. Is it working? I don't think it's working. I think it's a good idea to try to mediate these things, but I honestly don't think it's working, and it's obviously costing the city and the state a shit ton of money. Baltimore City Safe Streets program has spent tens of thousands of dollars this year on shoes, travel, and trainings provided by undisclosed vendors. The expenses were revealed to Fox 45 News via a public records request submitted in August. Baltimore City provided documents related to the request shortly after several city leaders called for an audit of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, the agency that administers Safe Streets. Because of the way Safe Streets is structured, nonprofit organizations are responsible for managing the day-to-day operations of the program. Those organizations report their expenses back to MONS, which is the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. So they report their expenses back to MONS, which provides reimbursement using taxpayer dollars. The nonprofit reimbursement charts provided to Fox 45 News show the Sandtown Winchester Safe Street site, operated by Catholic Charities, spent over $5,000 in April 2023 at major shoe retailers, DTLR and Shoe City. The expenses were intended to support community events, according to one chart. The money spent at DTLR and Shoe City is enough to buy at least 50 pairs of Nike shoes. The documents provided to Fox 45 News do not detail the specific items the Sandtown Winchester Safe Street staff purchased. The month prior, the Brooklyn Safe Street site, also operated by Catholic Charities, spent an additional $1,125 at Shoe City, along with hundreds of dollars at Forever 21, GameStop, Bath and Body Works, and Walmart. Altogether, the Brooklyn Safe Streets site spent over $4,000 at retail stores just in March 2023. In a statement to Fox 45 News, Catholic Charities said it uses taxpayer dollars to purchase items like shoes for Baltimore City residents to build trust with the community. Items like shoes and book bags are especially critical at back-to-school time, just as winter coats are especially critical entering into the winter. We do as much as possible to have items donated or purchased at discount. The Brooklyn Safe Street site made another major purchase in March of 23, $8,750 to Cornell University, located 5 hours north of Baltimore in upstate New York, for staff development. Cornell University did not respond to a request for comment from Fox 45 News on the story. The Safe Streets program controversially received millions of dollars worth of federal COVID-19 relief money, and the reimbursement charts obtained by Fox 45 News are offering a first glimpse into exactly how that money was spent. So the argument is that by giving these, essentially they're kids, right? That's the biggest perpetrators of the violence in Baltimore City these days is kids, people under 18, ranging from, 11 years old. So their idea is if we give these kids, new shoes, if we give them PlayStations, if we give them the things that they want, then it will help mediate the aggression in the street because they have the things that they want. Not the things they need, the things that they want. And that is it's grooming, essentially. It's grooming these kids to learn that if they cause enough of an uproar, they will get what they want. And I agree that, some of these poor kids do need things like shoes, coats, backpacks for school that they probably won't go to and things like that. But you have $20,000 spent on staff training, $12,000 for one training session. And this is all taxpayer money. This is not, they're not doing their own fundraising. This is all taxpayer money. A city that is losing, its residents by the hundreds of thousands every few years. And then a city with the highest property tax in the state, a city where the roads are falling apart, where public transit is garbage, a city where we gave the Baltimore Orioles money to stay there just because we want to feel good about having a baseball team here. Meanwhile, there's people that are working the system that aren't doing anything to benefit the community, but just taking from the taxpayer, taking from everything that you bitch about we have to pay taxes on this, income tax on that, sales tax on this, property tax on that. And they're taking that money, getting some shoes, getting some backpacks, getting a PlayStation, getting an Xbox, and they go back out and do the same thing they do. Because instead of shooting people this year, it's been car thefts. Let me look up the amount of car thefts in Baltimore City so far this year, because it is something that it's laughable almost how many vehicles have been stolen in Baltimore in 2023. This, as of a month ago, there has been more than 7,700 car thefts and 380 carjackings. So what it is these same kids that are getting the shoes, the backpacks, getting their problems resolved by neutral parties, are the same ones that are stealing 7,700 cars in the city. And yeah, Joe, you're right. The city is trying to sue Kia and Hyundai because their vehicles are too easy to steal, and it's costing too much taxpayer money to try to track down these cars and then figure out who stole them and charge them accordingly. And they're usually 11, 12-year olds, so they can't even charge them anyway, and they end up just getting sent back down. So yeah, it's the fact that we're even going after car manufacturers because their cars are too easy to steal. I mean, this is a dystopian. That is all I can say. Is that it's dystopian the fact that a city is suing car manufacturers because their cars are too easy to steal because their kids are so goddamn out of control. There is no parents. The grandparents can't control these kids. The school system is failing these kids absolutely horrendously. If you listen to my podcast with Spike a few months ago, we talked some stats on Baltimore City schools. There's a handful of kids that are in high school that are reading at grade level in the entirety of Baltimore City public schools. A handful of kids, like we can count them on two hands. The amount of kids that are proficient in English and math in high school in Baltimore City schools. Meanwhile, their school superintendent is making, after bonuses and incentives, she's making over $400,000 a year. Meanwhile, kids can't fucking read. But let's sue Kia and Hyundai because they are the problem. Right? Yeah. This is what progressive uh, policy gets you. What progressive politicians get you. They want to take your money. They want to give it to somebody else that doesn't deserve it, and then you get fucked anyway. They're taking your money to not do things that you want to do, and they're giving it to people that do not care about any sort of societal norms, any sort of uh, righteousness in their actions. Right? These are kids that are doing things that adults don't do. Right? It's completely insane. This between Baltimore City Mayor, who might lose next year to Sheila Dixon. If you don't know about Sheila Dixon, then she was the one that got arrested and fined for stealing gift cards that were supposed to be for the poor children of Baltimore City, and she stole them. And now she's looking like the favorite to be Baltimore City Mayor. So Baltimore City just keeps getting worse. And Wes Moore just came out today. He was at a work group today in Baltimore City, and he was saying, I'm bullish on Baltimore City. I'm investing all of this time, effort, money, resources in the Baltimore City, even though that's what we've been doing for the past forever, right? But we have such a corrupt government in Baltimore City. We have such a corrupt state government, and now we have a progressive mayor. We have a ultra progressive governor who really doesn't give a shit about Maryland. He's just trying to build his platform for his presidential run in a few years. And this is what we're stuck with. These are the people that are quote unquote leaders. These are the people that we have to look up to. And if there wasn't a better time to build your own community of like-minded individuals to accomplish goals that you want to accomplish, now's the time. If you haven't started doing that yet, start doing it. I implore you to please do it. I am running for president of my voluntary home improvement association, right? It's one street. It's about 210 households. And, that's where you start. You start by running and getting involved in your community, like your actual community. I'm not talking about, the sure, you can get involved with your church, but that has different demographics, has different geographical lines. I'm talking about your geographical location to get involved. Yeah, HOA warlord. I mean, look, every community has their problems, and somebody has to start doing something about it. And if not you, then who? Right? If you know that you can do something better than the leadership that's in control, run for office. That's all I can ask. I don't care if you run as Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, Republican, Green, I don't care. If it's something that is meaningful to you and you think that you can incite change, then please run for office, even if it's just in your voluntary home improvement association. Please do it, because as we're seeing, the world is falling apart, and it's people like us who have common sense, who have morals, who have a at least a little inkling of uh, economic fortitude, that we need to start taking control of these things. Uh, Neighborhood fines for all Kia and Hyundai owners. That's, I mean, imagine that. Imagine the HOA president coming to you and say you have to pay extra because you have a Hyundai or a Kia. That's essentially what Baltimore City is trying to do. Imagine that. Imagine the HOA president, or you getting a letter from your HOA saying, "Oh, we're going to have to fine you $200 because you have a Hyundai or a Kia, because you're bringing in you're baiting yourself for you know crime, and you're bringing crime into our community." That's how ridiculous this is. It's it's something needs to change, and it has to change from the bottom up, because changing it from the top down hasn't worked. It hasn't worked for 150 years, and something needs to change. Um, One last thing that I want to talk about. I know everybody's talking about it. I just want to speak on it really quickly based off of what I was reading right before I started the show. Is The Middle East is getting hot. It's getting hot, and it's getting hot quick. Obviously, most of us, if you haven't heard yet, we're sending 2,000 Marines to Israel to be in advisory and medical roles, just like how Vietnam started. I think it was 1954 is when we sent our first Marines over to Vietnam to be advisors and medical, and then 10 years later we were in full out war, and a lot of American boys died, and we had the draft and all that stuff. So, and then Joe Biden went there today. Uh, I haven't heard anything about it yet. I don't know what he's saying about Israel. Yeah, Joe, it's or chaotic. Yeah, it's escalating really fast. I agree, an alarming rate. Everything is going. It's so There's so much happening that we can't even social media can't keep up, right? And then you have I hate the word, but it does have a meaning. We have misinformation and disinformation coming out to where you don't even know what's real and what's not. You're just trying to go off your gut feeling based off of what you know about this organization or that country or that government. You're trying to imply your hopefully well thought out opinions on these organizations and what they're doing. Obviously, we heard about the 500 people that died in a hospital bombing, and Hamas said that it was the IDF. The IDF is saying that it was Hamas screwed up a rocket launch and destroyed a hospital and killed 500 Palestinian civilians. And then I'm seeing videos of where it's the audio of the rocket, and it's rockets. The sound is not rockets that are in Hamas's arsenal, that they're American rockets that were supplied to the IDF. So it has to be the IDF. It's just it's insane right now. And all this is doing is it's just escalating absolutely everything, and it's escalating so fast. And on top of that, uh right before I started the show, there are active protests outside the US embassy in Lebanon right now. There's fires being set. There's hundreds of, if not thousands of people protesting in front of the US embassy in Lebanon right now. So, if I recall correctly, last week, Joe Biden threatened that if Hezbollah were to get involved, then the US would have to intervene. And it keeps looking more and more like Hezbollah or Lebanon is going to get involved. And at this point, I would love to hear otherwise, but I don't see how this can't get escalated into something much worse. And as soon as the US gets a little bit too much involved, Iran's going to get involved. Whether they fund Hamas and Hezbollah or not, I'm not sure. But all I know is that if the US starts to get bullish or aggressive in this conflict, then Iran will intervene. Then you have Saudi Arabia that has said that they're not taking sides. Jordan just said right before the show started, Jordan said that they will not allow Joe Biden to come to their country to speak to their leadership, which was part of the original plan. I guess he was doing a little tour after Israel. So now you have another Islamic state that is not allowing Joe Biden to come, whether it's for safety reasons or not. I highly doubt it's for safety reasons. I just don't think Jordan wants anything to do, because he knows that he's going to come there and tell them that they need to take Palestinian refugees, and they already said they're not. Egypt said they're not. So this is a shitstorm that I don't see it ending well. Yeah, it's too easy to get hyper focused on this. And that's why I kind of wanted to do a back to the basics show tonight, is because I know so many people, we have, including myself, we have been all so infatuated with what's going on in the Middle East, because it very well could end up pushing us into war. And, that's the last thing we need. You have Janet Yellen, you have Biden saying that we can afford a two-front war. And is that admitting that we actually do have troops in Ukraine, which we all know we do, but is that an admittance? I don't know. So don't forget about what's going on in the Middle East. Don't forget about what's going on between Israel and Hamas, and potentially Hezbollah and Iran. Don't forget about that, but also don't lose sight of what's going on locally, because it's time like this, when we're all distracted by a single event, that your local governments, or even our federal government, is going to do things under the radar. And next thing we know, we lost a right because we were too distracted. So keep your head on a swivel, in the sense of watch everything that's going on. Pay attention to the Middle East. Absolutely. But also pay attention to our federal government. Pay attention to your state government. Pay attention to your county government. And get involved with your local community. So I feel like I just ranted this whole episode, but I feel like it was a good episode to come back, kind of, shake off the rust. It's been almost 2 months since the last episode. Yeah, this is very reminiscent of, the energy after 9/11. And we can't lose sight of the issues at hand. We can't submit our freedom for war like we did before. We cannot allow that to do. We cannot submit our freedom like we did for a pandemic, whatever you want to call it. We cannot submit to that again. So keep your head on a swivel. Keep your wits about you. Don't get enthralled in this side versus that side, right? Because war is bad. War sucks. Innocent lives, dying is bad. I don't care what side you are. So keep that in mind. Don't get wrapped up in all the rhetoric. Don't get wrapped up in this side or that side. Stay true to yourself. Stay persistent. Stay consistent. Be who you are. And if you have something to say it. And with that, I have nothing else for everybody tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm going to upload this hopefully tonight. So it's try to get back on this schedule at least once a week. So thanks for everybody who watched. Thanks for people commenting on YouTube and Twitter. Get in on the conversation, and hopefully we can bring these numbers back up now that I'm getting back in the saddle. So with that, I have nothing else. Everybody have a good night. Stay safe. And like I said, keep your head on the swivel, and I'll see you next week.